But you come home from that deployment, and now you're married, you got one daughter, you're expecting another daughter. And by the way, this whole time, like we talked about earlier, you've been fighting MMA, training. You fought, your first pro fight was between deployments.
Yeah.
And your amateur fights we already talked about was before your first deployment. And you make a decision that, all right, you're going to get out of the Marine Corps. And obviously, this is probably the hardest decision you ever had to make at that point in your life.
Brutal.
But it's 2007. How much were you thinking at that time? Like, hey, I'm going to go for this MMA thing, and it's gonna be. I got a shot at making it.
You know, it was. I knew I had a shot at.
You must have thought you had a shot because your ass was undefeated at this point.
Oh,
you were
yeah.
like knocking people out.
Yeah, of course.
You were the man.
The worst thing that could have happened, right? I mean, the worst thing. I'm training with. So I would basically go around the base, and I found this corpsman with cauliflower ear. Hey, how'd you get that cauliflower ear? I state champion at Oklahoma wrestling in high school.
Boom.
Be here 1800 every night. Got it? I'll bring you gear. Cool. He was in. And he then started training with us, started fighting. But I got a wrestler dude now, right? Yeah. Another kid who wrestled. Hey, you do you're a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. You're my instructor.
Master.
Yeah. He was my master. I had no striking coach. We had no pad work, no nothing. It was me and a couple of Marines plus a corpsman. And we would get after it every day. And then every time we fought, we won. So we thought we really knew what we were doing. Yeah. And I would take leave every once in a while. I'd take leave and I would go to Extreme Couture for a couple of days and get destroyed. Yeah. I went out to Temecula, to Dan Henderson's place. I'd go get destroyed. And I'd just try and learn 2 moves, right? Give me 2 moves. So here I am in the WEC. Again, armbar from the mount, armbar from the guard. Got those. I know what half guard is now. I can't sweep a soul from it, though. But Mola Wall showed me how to defend a single leg and a double leg when I was out of Temecula. So now I got that down pat. And I still got a mean jab cross hook. Away we go, baby. And I'm winning fights with these things. And, you know, I would end up losing the first time in WC. And that would prompt me to leave Georgia, go find somewhere to train. And I'll never forget my first training session at Jackson Winklejohn Academy. And I'm there training, and Greg Jackson comes walking up to me after my first practice. And this is as polite as he could try to compliment me at the time. Brian, I'm so amazed at how far you've gone with how little information you've been given. Code word, wow, you suck. How the hell did you win all these fights? It was, you know, one of the things I explained, I said, look, when you only know so much,
right,
you can fight 150 miles an hour. Because you're not thinking. Then all of a sudden I'm learning all these new techniques. Then I started thinking. I had an up and down period there where win some, lose some. And I got to a point where after the Phil Davis fight, hey, you may be out of here. Mm-hmm. You know, the UFC wasn't a huge fan of me. They didn't really care. They didn't, you know, Joe Silva wasn't a huge fan of these WEC guys that were forced upon him. That wasn't a talent. He went and found it. And I told him I'd fought 3 times inside of 6 months. And I said, look, I need a break. And I literally looked at my MMA training like you would look at the training of a Marine company. Mm-hmm. Where am I weak? How much time do I have? What am I going to schedule? What am I going to do? Who are the experts I can go to get better in all these areas? And I approached it. I knew at that point, hey, look, I still had a full-time job. I never fought without one. Transitioned out of the Marine Corps, started working at a company called Med Assets. Med Assets had this project, this thing. Hey, hire heroes. We want to help vets get jobs. Well, maybe you could lead that. Took that over. So I'm working every day, but at the same time, you know, I started this thing in MMA, and I can't go out like this. Too many people said I was going to wash out, that I was going to be exposed. Couldn't do it. No way. There were too many Marines at the time taking pride in my performances in there. And although I was older, you know, I'm probably 29 at that time. So in terms of MMA age, I'm green and I'm already kind of getting a little old, but I started to find a way, started to figure it out and not cutting any corners like other fighters were at the time, but starting to figure it out. And it all just came down to discipline, where a lot of martial artists don't want to spend time. They don't want to spend 30 minutes drilling one move and understanding how they could use that move from various positions and why it works and how it plays into my style of fighting, why it will be effective. They want to drill that one move. They want to do it 5 times, and then they want to go live. Let's go live. Let's go
Guilty.
live. Yeah. And I had to learn at that point, if I'm going to catch up with these fighters who are younger in many cases, but much more experienced than me, I've got to take an analytical approach and an honest approach to my skill set and start to shore up some holes, or else I'm going to continue to lose.
You just practice just wrestling like crazy and then submission avoidance?
I actually went and put a gi on for the first time ever. It was working some basics because everybody wanted to hold me down. If I could get out from underneath somebody with a gi on, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier no gi.
Truth.
I was bringing in wrestlers that were way above my level. A guy named Harry Lester, who was, an Olympian, was coming in and throwing me all over the place. And so I was training wrestling nonstop. And then I'd go to Albuquerque. I didn't have a fight coming up, but I would go live in Albuquerque for 2 weeks at a time away from my family and help other guys in their training camps and get exposed and drill. And here was the other big part, was guys like Rashad Evans, Keith Jardine, Joey Villasenor, Nate Marquardt. Without those guys, it would have never happened, because after they would beat me, after they would pass my guard, take me down, hit me with this combination, they would stop afterwards and tell me how and why. And so I learned at a much faster rate than your typical fighter would, because not only I'm drilling with some of the best in the world, taking the time to drill and taking an analytical approach. Hey, I know we're going to work this today, coach, but my butterfly guard is completely ineffective, and I'd love to work it specifically, not just on sweeping, because I don't think I'm going to get there yet against my level of competition.
Just get up.
I'd love to use it to get up, or even just get to the fence, where now I've got a third leg that I could utilize to get back up. And so we would drill specifics like that. And I've got these guys who have 30-plus fights, who are champions, now taking the time to help me, which meant a lot to me. I'll never forget it. I mean, they were as much coaches to me as Mike Winklejohn and Greg Jackson were. And then, obviously on top, you could do all of that. The other piece of it was when I would do my camps there, when I really got where I was at my best, when I beat Chris Liebens or Santiago, when I was beating those guys, mentally I was in the best place. My family was in a great spot. My wife and kids were very supportive of me leaving and doing my camps in Albuquerque, and my time away from them, it made me nasty. They'd come visit, but man, I would literally look at my opponent like, you're the one who kept me away from my family this long. You're going to pay for it. And it was a strong motivator. And that, if you're in a place as a fighter where you're not hungry, getting new information, being able to mentally be in the right place for you to perform, because it's not about who the better fighter is. It has nothing to do with it. It's about who fights best that night. And if you can't mentally be in the state where you're going to fight best that night, you got a problem and you're in the wrong place. And that phase of my career, that's when I was there. I was able to do that. And that was when I was at my best, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you had some stunning fights. I know. I always tell, sometimes my fighters will say, "Oh, I'm not feeling it tonight." Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, this is in training. I'll say, look, it doesn't matter how you feel tonight, because fight night comes, you might be feeling good, bad. Doesn't matter. What you have to do is perform right now. That's what you got to do. So train yourself to perform right now. But yeah, you had some great fights. And Chris Lieben, who I know trained with Chris, is a great guy, and he's such a tough bastard. Oh. And you guys threw down.
Yeah, we knew neither one of us were going to be that hard to hit. But no, tons of respect for that guy, and that was a fight he didn't have to take.
Yeah,
I saw an opening there where there was a window, and he may just take me as a fight to, okay, let me go get a win, get some money. Right. And go on, because he had just come off 2 huge wins in like a week, or in 10 days notice.
He's a psycho.
And so
I love him.
Phenomenal guy in this sport. And yeah, it was a wild ride. And when I look back on it, there's definitely some regrets, like anybody. There's some things you wish you could have done. Some things that happened family wise that certainly stalled and helped aid the decision to stop. My wife losing her little brother to suicide was a really tough thing. Her mom was living with us at the time. So, us going through that tragedy together, it's hard. We're human beings, and a lot of fighters have to deal with tragedy and compete. This is what we do for a living. We've got to fight through it. It's a hard thing. But when I look back on it, where I know I was as an athlete And as a mixed martial artist, how green I was to have come that far and been a legitimate top 10 middleweight at that time. I'm proud of that. Especially in the era when I fought, where there was some extracurricular activities going on as well.
You're fighting against guys that a lot of guys were on steroids. There was no testing, or there was really limited testing.
It was an IQ test, right? If you failed that, you were just straight up dumb. But it was fun. And
the guys you lost to Chael Sonnen, right? Who was 2 minutes from being the middleweight champion of the world against Anderson Silva. You lost to him. You beat Sakara. Then you lost to Bisping, who actually is the current middleweight champion. So the guys that beat you were badasses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were a guy that started fighting 3 weeks ago. That's just awesome, man. It's a testament.
The coolest part about it was during that time, and it kind of happened subtly beneath that, at least to the fight fans, was taking that little Hire Heroes USA project that company Med Assets asked me to watch over, right? Step one was starting to build some programs. Step two was getting one of my best friends in the world who served with me, who was right next to that track as it burned, Nate Smith, to come in, be my chief operating officer, and build this amazing team, and leveraging some of the media attention I got for fighting, leveraging it for our cause, in building it. And not just building a company where, hey, we went out, we fundraised for a mission. No, that's bogus. We were out there accomplishing the mission, helping veterans get legitimate jobs, careers, so that they can succeed and lead again back here home and in their communities, and watching it grow from a team of 5 to a team of 10 to a team of 20 to where now we've got 96 full-time employees. And we're bringing in over 300 veterans and spouses a week into the program.
That's awesome.
That was all built with this amazing team of people while I was still fighting. That was my full-time job, doing that, and having a board of directors that had the foresight and the perspective to say, hey, you know what? Yes, you're going to be a little limited during some of these training camps, but what you're able to bring to our brand is helpful right now in the phase that this company is. And it's been a wild and really amazing ride. And some of the things we talked about earlier, where you have these questions that will always haunt you about the loss of your friends, the loss of your Marines, the loss of your SEALs. When you can lead an initiative like that, it helps you feel like, hey, you know what, I am taking advantage of every day. Every day we're moving forward, we're achieving, we're helping other warriors now find success post-military service. And that's me earning it, earning my day where they no longer have any. Travis Manning doesn't live anymore, and his family would give anything to see him one more time. I can't bring him back. But I'll tell you what, if I sat here crying about it, feeling sorry for myself that my friend Travis was gone, he'd be the first to slap the hell out of me when I die for it.
Or at least do a double leg on your ass.
Oh, he was, I'm telling you, man, and that was, he planned on fighting. When he got done with that deployment, he'd still be fighting to this day. He was a bad dude.
And that was your last fight in the UFC, and you retired after you fought Vanderlei Silva, which, did you plan
no.
to do that? So those of you that don't know that aren't in MMA, there's a guy, a legendary mixed martial artist named Vanderlei Silva. I saw him fight a few times in Japan back in the day, and he's a brawler, and he's incredible punching power. And his nickname is the Axe Murderer because he looks like a psycho. And anyways, Brian had a fight with him, and these two guys went in there. It was like Russian roulette.
It was a street fight.
It was a street fight. It was a street fight. And eventually you got caught, by one of the best strikers that have ever been in the game. And by the way, you dropped him a couple times. You had that. I mean, you didn't have it one, but you dropped him 2 or 3 times in the first round, or twice in the first round.
He came back from the dead
a
minimum of 2 times.
Yeah.
The eyes were in the back of his head, and then he looked at me again with bloodshot eyes. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. But no, that was not the plan. And so the plan,
you were with Greg Jackson and Wink, right?
I wasn't. For the Sakara, Bisping, and Vanderlei fight, I trained myself. And the reason being was right after I'd fought Chael Sonnen, 2 days before Christmas, me and my wife land in baggage claim, and I get a call. And her little brother, who had struggled with bipolar disorder and depression, and we didn't know that then, right? He had taken his own life, went up to a cabin in the middle of the woods and taken his own life, and had to tell my wife they're in baggage claim. And her mom at the time was living with us. It was, personal life was a mess. Still got to pay bills though, right? You still got a company to run, still got a fight career that I've got to push through. And I can't just, hey, look, I'm going to take 7 months off here to get through this because I got bills to pay. Anyways, it caused me to start my own camp. So the game plan going in was, hey, we're gonna take Vanderlei down a little bit in this fight and disrupt him, really confuse him because nobody's used to me doing that.
Yeah.
And so I fly to Japan. We get off the plane after that long flight, after a long training camp where I absolutely overtrained. And we get to the hotel, and me and one of my striking coaches, Manu Natal, we go start hitting pads. We're hitting pads, and pad work's done. And oh man, all of a sudden I start to cool down. I can't lift my knee up on my left leg. Tear something in my hip. And it happens, right? I mean, Vanderlei could have walked in there with how many miles? He could have walked in with a couple injuries. So anyways, now this gets into my head a little bit. And so I asked to see the UFC doctor. And so as soon as he landed, he was told, hey, you got to go see Brian Stann. I say, look, I've looked at all the stuff. Novocaine is legal. I just want to get Novocaine for fight night so I won't feel it. And I'm walking around the hotel, and I'm trying not to show anybody that I'm limping at the press conference because I have a legitimate limp. And anyways, he's like, okay, we're in Japan. We're not in a second or third world country. We're in Tokyo, right? I could have walked across the street and probably gotten lidocaine. Anyways, supposed to get it. I'm going to get it. Doesn't get it. When you fight in Japan, the fight's so that they could cater to the American TV audience. You leave at like 7 a.m. So he's sitting there sorry. So I let that affect me too much mentally. And we're trying to warm up backstage, and I'm trying to shoot some double legs, and I'm not feeling it. And in my own head, right before I walk in, I'm like, you know what? This dude's got some miles on him. I hit like a truck. Let's get in there. Let's knock this dude out, and let's get this fight over with. So, ready to go. Walk out there, and he tags me first. Hits me behind the ear, and you know, most of Vanderlei's fights, he's a little bit more of an accumulation guy. He's not considered a one-punch knockout guy. This one right hand he hits me with, I had never been rocked in the octagon before in my life. And he dropped me. So I was like, all right, it's on. Let's go. And so then I rock him. And once I rocked him, then I thought, okay, one more good shot on the chin, and he's done. And I landed it, and he'd go down, and then he'd come back. And I'm, wait a minute here. And so I'm just caught up. And so the second round, I start to get a little bit more technical and move around a little bit. Like, all right, he's obviously not going away. I've got to take a different approach. I don't know what this guy's made of. And then I don't remember it. You know, I get caught with that huge punch. Don't remember any of it. And it's crazy, but I realized I lost. I came to as John Anik, who's one of my closest friends now, comes up to me with a microphone. And I realized, well, I don't remember winning. So I must have lost this fight. Oh, man. And it was a horrible flight home. I'm sitting there flying home, and I had a Jack and Coke in my hand. Couldn't sleep at all. Didn't sleep, and I am miserable. I lost to a guy I was supposed to beat, who was supposed to be washed up. You know, I had pretty much made the decision then, you know, I'm out. It's over. If you're not going to get busy being the champion, then there's other areas where that need my attention more, from my family to the company I'm trying to run. And it was a hard decision. And part of me, when I made the decision, thought for sure, oh, I'm definitely going to come back, right? I'm going to come back. And for like 2 years, I held on to that and had to fight against it. Like, no, it is not in your best interest to come back anymore. It's in your, you do a better job talking about on the microphone than you're going to do strapping the gloves on anymore, pal. You're 35, now I'm 36. It's over.
That makes me feel real good over here.